Hello, everyone. It's Shane Conto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And this week, we're talking some baseball. And no, this isn't just a regular check-in on how the season's going. We have a crew of baseball fans here to talk about our feelings and our expert opinions on all the rule changes that baseball has decided to do. I don't know if you all saw Jerry Seinfeld talk about what he would do if he were the commissioner of baseball, but he said, do away with DH. Everybody should hit. So I'm going to go around, let everybody introduce themselves, tell us their team, and then shamelessly plug wherever you would like to shamelessly plug, because we love shameless plugs on this channel. Nash, you get to go first.
Oh, wonderful. My name is Nash. As you can probably tell, I'm a San Francisco Giants fan representing the West Coast, Best Coast. I also love the Seattle Mariners because I'm technically closer to them, and so I have an NL-AL team, but the Mariners aren't doing very well this year, so I get to pick and choose. I think Twitter might be dying, but that's the best place to go follow me, Nash_Doll, and you can follow all my unhinged baseball takes.
Welcome to Threads.
Yeah, I just started Threads as well, so we'll see.
Robert.
I'm Robert. I've been on the show before. Despite my shirt, I'm a Red Sox fan. Can't really tell, but it's a Bouffard shirt. I was in a particularly moody time of my life in this past baseball offseason and decided to support the player over the team. And for this episode, I just decided to bring more baseball variety to the images for the viewers. Big time Red Sox fan. I know we're talking about baseball, but follow me on Letterboxd at Robert's Thoughts.
And Heath, where's your NL West representation?
I will not be.
Oh, that's right.
The NL West. I'm Heath Lynch. I am a St. Louis Cardinals fan, and I threw my arms up in the air just a couple minutes ago because, of course, the Cardinals blew it, and the Marlins just walked them off after the Cardinals just came back. And regardless, anyway, that's just the way this season's going. I'm a St. Louis Cardinals fan, and life sucks real bad right now, but that's okay. So we wear St. Louis Browns stuff tonight for a team that hasn't existed for decades, but that's fine too. If you want to follow me, like Robert, you can follow my movie stuff over on Letterboxd at the One Heath Bar or Heath Lynch. I think searching either of them should find me.
Yeah, we're all movie people at SiftPop, but we also like baseball because we're well-rounded individuals. And if you
I wouldn't go that far.
And for those who are probably wondering why is Shane from New Jersey wearing a Diamondbacks hat, I am a Diamondbacks fan and have been since I watched Randy Johnson strike out 20 Cincinnati Reds and the Diamondbacks won in 13 innings on a walk-off bases loaded situation. And I'm like, wow, this is great. I want to be
your
a
best
fan
Scott
of
Van
this.
Pelt.
Huh?
Doing your best Scott Van Pelt Sports Center update.
And that just happened to be like early May 2001. So it worked out nicely for me as I was the only person in New Jersey rooting against the Yankees after 9/11. So there you go. And I was a happy 10-year-old. So, but still Diamondbacks fan and happy one right now. And Nash and I get along just fine. So at least he's not a Dodgers fan. Then we might have a problem. But we're here to talk about all the rules that they keep changing in baseball, and are they really improving the game? Because I know baseball's really concerned about speeding up the games. And to point this out, we were just talking about I was in Boston last week and saw a Red Sox game that lasted 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That was the fastest game I've ever been to in my life. And I'm just like, game's over? And like my friend Haley, who doesn't watch baseball, who went with me, who I was visiting, she's like, I expected to be out later. I'm like, yeah.
So did I.
Welcome to the new baseball. But we're going to be hitting on the pitch clock along with the disengagements and the pickoff situation, talk about bigger bases, We're going to talk about the second base runner that gets plopped on in extra innings. Talk about the rule that you have to actually pitch the 3 batters before they take you out, aka the anti-La Russa rule. No more 3 pitchers, 3 outs, and mound visit limitations in games. So let's get started with the whole pitch clock situation, which I feel like this is probably going to be the most interesting conversation. But let's start. I'm going to go around. Nash, what are your general thoughts on how baseball has changed with the pitch clock, and do you like it?
I love it. And I think I'm fairly certain I know at least 2 of your guys' opinions on it, but I'm a huge fan of it. I know that going to the game, and it's like I understand there's like a sentiment of you want to be there for the 3 hours or whatever. But in terms of the games that I have gone to, the energy level feels like it's at an all-time high. And then because of the countdown, the games that I went to, so I went to some Mariners games, and then I've also gone to some Giants games. In close games, when the closer comes in, the stadium starts counting down the pitch clock, and it like ramps up the tension even more. I've just been a huge fan of it. I guess that is in summary. I don't think everybody here loves it as much as I do. But it's also allowed me, I feel like it's single-handedly helped me get more invested in baseball in general. Cause I always say that I love the Giants, I love the Mariners, but I'm a bigger baseball fan in general. I just love watching the sport. I love seeing the sport prosper. And I feel like I'm seeing a lot more new eyes come to baseball, and I'm hearing more people talk about it. So, and I think a big part of that is because it feels a little bit more accessible, that you can sit down and the same length of you're going to go out to see a movie, you're going to go to a baseball game. And I guess maybe diehard fans don't necessarily want that, but I think it's a really cool growth for the future. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
How about you, Robert?
Nash, you just hate tradition, don't you? No.
Yes, I do. That's me.
So Nash was referring to me as one of the people who he thought he knew the stance of, because in the off season I was like very against the pitch clock, just because I think it fundamentally does go against the spirit of baseball for me. And that has always, like, the other sport that I follow intently is basketball. And it's just a whole different mindset with the clock. And, you got to score before the clock and look at the shot clock and all this kind of stuff. Baseball, I've always loved that you can take your time. There's nothing stopping it except for outs, and how well you can execute. As a season has gone on, I don't have the exact numbers up in front of me, but I know pitch clock violations have gone down. And specifically the pitch clock hasn't been as consequential as it was initially, and people or batters and pitchers are getting less and less worked up over the violations. So I think in general it's doing a good job of speeding up the games. I've only been to 2 games this year, in Philly and in Baltimore. I have noticed that it's gone quicker. I also went to, I live near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and there's the Harrisburg Senators, the Nationals AA team. I went to a doubleheader, 7-inning each game, and I think it lasted about 4.5 hours total, which was absolutely wild. Got home before 11, and it was just the weirdest thing. So yeah, I've grown to like the pitch clock, or appreciate what it does, even though I'm still fundamentally against, having a clock at all in baseball.
Heath?
It's weird, man. I almost straddle the line. Overall, I am happy about it. I think the pitch clock is a great idea for a number of reasons. The main ones being, yes, the speediness of the game. As much as a baseball purist may revel in the mind games that goes into trying to manipulate a pitch count or shaking off a pitch or whatever,
Or watching guys grab their crotch. That's my favorite part.
Exactly. Or readjusting their gloves. I can't get enough of it. But I do recognize that for an entertainment product, which inevitably all form of sports is that, you know, you can't just do that. You can't have these 3 hour and 45-minute games and expect to hold people's attention. And especially when, you know, there was a time where baseball was America's pastime, and I don't think that's the case anymore. Now, it may be to me personally, sentimentally, but if we're being honest with ourselves, football has long taken the crown, American football, of being the United States primary sport. And even then, I wouldn't even say baseball second. I would say basketball second these days. So a big part of that is losing young audiences. You know, football, basketball continued to evolve, change rules, make it so that the sport was ever engaging, and baseball kind of just let things slip. And, you know, yeah, a game goes 2 to 4 to 5 minutes longer on average every year, but then that accumulates year after year. And before you know it, over the past 2 decades, we went from having naturally 2.5 hour games or 3 hour games to almost 4 to 4.5 hour games. And along the way, we lost a lot of audiences. We lost a lot of attention on the sport. And like Nash said, you know, people are talking again. It has a little bit of a buzz to it. It's kind of exciting. And for those reasons alone, those intrinsic, even outside of the game reasons, I think it's a good thing. Inside the game, I still think it is a good thing, just because I think it does add a nuanced level of extra strategy to it. I'll talk about it in an example in a little bit, but I think that overall it is for the better. It makes it for a more consistent game as well, for both pitchers and batters. I think it's overall a good thing.
I think, in the same kind of boat with Robert. I originally was very mad about this idea and just being like, this isn't baseball. Like, the whole entire point is, like, you could take your time, you can do strategy, you can do these things. And it's more like baseball is always more like a chess match than, you know, something that's like go, 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 go. I've gotten unlucky apparently, because the only Phillies games I've gone to are well over 3 hours. Because they play ugly baseball and just make innings last so much longer than they have to, even if no runs are scored. Why does it have to get the bases loaded 3 times in one game? But that's just Phillies. It's Phillies baseball for you. But like, I went to a 2 hour and 10-minute game. I'm like, holy crap. And I've had to change my eating habits at the games, because I always had like get my hot dogs at the beginning, get a little snack after the 3 innings, and get my ice cream in a helmet right before the 7th inning stretch. And now I'm like, I can't eat that much. That condense of a time. And apparently people can't drink that much. So I think that's going to be an issue moving forward, is loss of revenue for the stadiums, that I think a lot of them are mad about. But like, I'm not against shorter games. I do think it just changes baseball. It's different now. It's different strategy. You saw Max Scherzer right off the bat was messing around with batters in spring training until they had to make even more rules to stop him from messing with people. So it's one of those kinds of things, like, pitchers are going to figure it out. Some of them, like, there's a bunch of pitchers that started this season not good. Like, a lot of big name pitchers had bad first outings, and some of them got sent to minor league places after being a Cy Young contender. Looking at you, Toronto. But the thing is, it's like, it's such a weird situation, but everybody has to get used to it. And I think most people have, unless your name is Craig Kimbrell, who's still pissed.
It takes too long to move his arm back to the right position.
I know. It's like, I think once we get through this season, it's just going to become normal. And I don't think people are going to talk about it. But I think for the good of baseball, I do think that it's helping out. And, you know, people are going to have to adjust, or they're not going to, and then they can't compete in today's game. And that's kind of just how it's going to be. So I'm for it. Does anybody have any, like, retorts to anything that anybody said, or anything they want to specifically add, or something that you feel like really highlights the good or bad of this?
Well, one thing that you were talking about is additional strategy, and you mentioned how pitchers would evolve and figure out ways. It's not just pitchers, but batters. Yeah. So one of the example I was referencing earlier, and Robert, I don't know if you remember this because it was against your Red Sox, my Cardinals. Kenley Jansen, the closer for the Sox, has 3 pitch clock violations. He leads the team for the Red Sox, but 2 of those violations came in one at bat against Wilson Contreras of the Cardinals, where Wilson psyched him out and got Jansen to mess up twice because he had his bat over his shoulder like he was ready, and he was looking at Jansen like he was ready, but his foot was still out of the box, and Jansen wasn't paying attention, and Contreras got 2 extra balls, and it ended up being a walk because of that. So it is going to be interesting. It's like you said, it's just a new layer of strategy. Pitchers and batters alike are going to find ways to mess with the minds of the opponent, just like they did in the old days. It's just a new element. And I think that is going to be an interesting thing to see evolve. I don't know if that was just one time that Contreras really just got in Jansen's head, and maybe no one will ever be able to duplicate that kind of mistake in one at bat ever again. Or maybe people will get really good at it in like 5 years. That will just be part of the strategy of the game. How can you take advantage of the pitch clock from both a hit batter or pitcher perspective? I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch evolve.
I was going to bring up that exact example, because I think the rules need tightening. Like I think they need to be clarified a little bit, because if his foot's out of the box, why does that count as him being ready? You know what I mean?
Sure.
So like, I'm all for new ways of messing with other players, but like, you as a pitcher, you see the foot's out of the box and you think, hey, the batter's not ready, the batter's not set. So that's a little bit weird to me. And I was also going to bring up Kenley, because Nash, you mentioned being at games where there's countdowns. Both games I've been to this year have been Kenley's come in at the end of the game. And he's been notorious for having like one of the longest time between pitches, basically his whole career. Yeah. And no one's messed with him. They've both been road games, and he's closed out the save both times. And it's weird to hear your experiences versus mine, where the Philly and Baltimore crowds just seemed to be whatever about it.
That's crazy. Yeah. So, it was opening weekend, but so the Mariners were playing the Guardians, and Karinchak came in, and Karinchak's a little bit of a wild guy, but both games where he came in, whole stadium, like 25,000 people started 10, 9, 8, 7, and he got rattled. Like, I think in that opening game, he ended up giving up the walk-off or the game-tying home run. And so I don't know. It's interesting, but maybe it's not across. Maybe it's just lonely Pacific Northwest people.
It's definitely not a Phillies thing. Yeah. I've been to multiple Phillies games this season. Nobody counts to the clock.
Yeah.
Okay,
I've only gone to one Cards game this year, but I don't recall anyone ever counting.
Well, my experience is my reality.
I don't like Phillies fan. That just doesn't feel like the vibe that
Phillies fans messing with the players absolutely sounds like a vibe. I'm shocked they don't do this.
No, they're a little bit more like
things.
Malicious about it. Start yelling at specific players, specific things that are not so nice. I've definitely witnessed that plenty of times. I do think it's interesting that you have these kinds of situations, and I think of like what, like 100% Chase Utley would have been a player that would mess with people with a pitch clock, 100%. And like, you could think of players that definitely be the ones that would be doing those kinds of things and messing with people. But that's a layer of the game that's going to be here moving forward. And like Robert, like you said, if they start tightening things up and trying to look at stuff like that, they had to make it, like I mentioned, they had to make a rule change in the middle of spring training because Max Scherzer was fast pitching. wasn't even letting them get in the box. And so, like, there's going to be people that are going to push the boundaries and are going to cause the league to change some rules. Does anybody have anything else they wanted to add about the pitch clock, the disengagements, pickoffs? Do we miss more pickoffs?
Not necessarily, though that's another one of those things where I totally get the mindset of missing it. Red Sox fan, the steal in 2004, Mariano threw over to first however many times, 3-4 times, and still didn't do anything. I should probably add, but like that was part of his ploy of keeping Dave Roberts at first base. Also, I'm going to take a shot at Heath, but that's how a World Series game ended in 2013. It's just interesting that you have to. It's almost like a card game instead of a chess game, where you're like, all right, I only have a certain number of these cards. When am I going to use them?
Yeah.
I wasn't able to find any specific stats on like how it's materially affected things, apart from pickoff success rate has gone up. So that kind of surprises me.
Stolen bases are gone up.
Yeah, stolen bases are gone up too, but so is the pickoff success rate, which is really interesting.
Which that's been one of my favorite things this season, is watching people run. Because the thing is, it diversifies baseball. I don't need like 9 people in a lineup batting 200, striking out 200 times and hitting 20 plus home runs. Like, there should be players that play that game. It's exciting seeing Acuna doing what he's doing, stolen bases and home runs, and totally going to win an MVP at this point. I love watching, like, the Diamondbacks are 100% in the place that they are because they can run. Because Corbin Carroll's ridiculously fast. Jake McCarthy could bat 200, but if he's getting on base, he's stealing second base. And those are exciting things. I looked at the Phillies stat. They had like 4 stolen bases tonight, and they could barely do fundamental baseball. So it's nice seeing stuff like that, like moving things along. I'm a Diamondbacks fan, but the primary games I watch are Phillies games. And if I have to watch Kyle Schwarber try to play left field every day, it's going to frustrate me. So you're seeing that right now. But like, it's the kind of thing where it's like it adds a whole layer to the game that I think has been missing, because so many things have been focused on, I want to hit a home run. And you isolate players that can do certain things that are different. That's the whole entire point of baseball, is like, not every baseball player has to look like the most amazing athlete. Like, it's an interesting thing to see the different kinds of players and the different kinds of things going on.
And that's why I enjoy the Yankee roster construction, because they don't understand that, and they haven't for the last however many years.
Oh, it's abysmal. It's fun to watch how terrible they're doing it right now.
Without Judge, it's just garbage. Anyway.
He took out a whole entire wall, and that wall took out a toe.
Did anyone else, when they saw the clip of Judge going through the wall, think of Bump Bailey from The Natural going through the wall?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just was curious if I was the only one.
He's a monster.
Yeah,
that was a metal gate.
I know,
like bam. But then
I'm surprised that those are legal. Honestly, that they don't make a rule that all walls should be padded. Like, that just seems so dangerous. Let alone if like a cleat gets stuck in there and you're trying to climb it or something. Anyway. That's separate.
Pad the monster.
Yeah,
or at least the base of it if someone's going to run into it.
Well, to be fair, the whole base is a scoreboard.
It's just a sheet of metal.
Yeah.
You hear when the ball clangs off of it.
Oh, yeah. Hearing a ball hit the wall, the monster, is always funny to me.
But so many steals. And like, Acuna has like almost as many steals as the most steals last season. And it's the All-Star break, not even.
There's an Oakland A who's going to steal 85 bags this year or something. Like, it's incredible. Like
Ricky Henderson.
And nobody's watching it because it's the A's.
That could be a whole entire other conversation.
They need to reverse boycott the season for people to be watching it.
Yes.
I just want to throw this out here. Fireman. I hate that guy.
Yeah.
I hate him so much. That dig that he threw at the A's about that was the
disgusting,
dickish
actually
thing.
Disgusting.
Like, what a piece of shit.
Yeah.
So
As soon as he called the World Series
like
trophy a piece of metal,
He's
there's
a hunk
no
of
coming
metal.
back.
Yeah.
He's a puppet.
I mean, he's a commissioner. All commissioners are puppets, but yes, he is explicitly bad.
Yeah, they're not all outrageous like that, though. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like this, he is particularly egregious.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about base running clocks? Or, well, this one kind of like the bigger bases. Has anybody noticed that the bases are bigger?
So I don't know if it's just like, I know they're bigger, so it looks like it, but they do look big in person at least. That's my only observation.
I mean, I think the only observation we can make is what the point we've already made, which is, to the naked eye, especially if you're at the stadium, like if you're watching it at home, you can see it on the TV. The bag looks a bit bigger, like you were saying, Robert. But like if you're in the ballpark, you're up, 30, 40 rows back, or in your upper level, like you're not going to really tell the difference between a couple inches on the size of the bag. But where we do see it is in those stats, in those stolen bases, and clearly stolen bases are up, and it's not by a small margin. So yes, obviously it's having an impact, and I agree. I think it's for the better. I think more base running, just more people on the bases in general, it's more exciting. Again, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier about how this is still a product. It's still entertainment. You have to market it and make it interesting to put eyes on it. That helps that, you're in, along with some of the other changes we'll talk about later about getting balls in play and, putting runners on the bags, and just all these things are meant for one purpose only. And that's to make the game more exciting so that more people watch it. And that helps you bring in more money, and that helps you bring in new audiences, and, gets kids watching it when they're younger, so that maybe instead of growing up and saying, hey, I want to play soccer, I want to play football, I want to play basketball, they'll say, I want to play baseball. And the Major League Baseball really needs that. They really do.
Just to jump off that just a little bit, because you talked, and we're going to talk about this more, but specifically in regards to the stolen base, and the reason why I love stolen bases so much, because I mean, I know like Robert and I are a similar age, but like I feel like when we came up as baseball fans, the stolen base was dying. Like, I mean, it was you just said like last year, the person who led MLB had like 40, and it's crazy. So seeing it re-enter baseball again has almost single-handedly helped like revitalize and give me more energy about watching baseball, but also just fans in general, because I think the stolen base has added a degree of, among other things, that a team can almost always come back now. Like if they can just get a guy on who's like relatively quick and he can steal second, all of a sudden in one or two plays, you have a rally going. And it doesn't feel as like, oh man, we're down 2 runs, closer's coming in, it's over. Like I feel like it's like one of those elements that has really changed, because, and we're seeing it. The amount of teams that are having success in like late innings and comeback games, like the Giants are one of them, the Marlins are one of them, where their records in these late innings, the comeback games, are incredible. And if you like map out the stats, it's because they're the teams that are stealing bases in the opportune times in the 8th and the 9th inning. So that's got to be entirely because of the pitch clock and because of the bigger bases, right? Or the throwover. So I think it's rad. And it's kind of funny that you said screw Manfred, because a lot of these rules are going to be attributed to his time as the commissioner.
Yeah.
But still screw Manfred.
I'm not giving him credit.
To piggyback off that even further, and you were talking about your age, and it's worth noting, at least in our group here, I'm the oldest one. I remember Whitey Ball If you're familiar with the term whitey ball in the 80s with the Cardinals, it was known
the Negro Leagues.
Sorry. Known for like small ball baseball. Literally, the point was, all right, Ozzie Smith, go get a single. All right, steal. Willie McGee, go. And like the idea of getting a home run was just inconsequential. It wasn't even a factor. It was get singles, move the runners, slap a double into the corner and just drive home as many runs as you can with speed and efficiency and average. And to quote one of the best documentaries that's ever been made, Ken Burns Baseball, there was just this time, and especially Robert Nash, I think with your guys' age, where there was just a time where it's just, all right, get a guy on first, maybe walk another guy, and then get your big slugger up and then pop a 3-run homer. And that's just what you did every 3 innings when the heart of the rotation came back up. And you just hoped you had enough home runs to outlast the other team. And although the game is slightly shifted, we've kind of just been doing that for the better part of 20 years. If we're being really honest, that's just the way, especially, we talked about it earlier, is how many batters now are just 200, 220 hitters with
186, 20 plus home runs.
And they're going to hit 20, 25, maybe 35 home runs a year, but they're going to have like 200 strikeouts, and because that's what people are going for these days. And to a degree, I almost understand it, because the counterpoint is like, well, there's a guy on the other side throwing a 96-mile-an-hour slider. It's not like I have much other chance other than to try to crank the hell out of it and just hope that I make good contact. So like, I get where it's coming from, but yeah, it's been really interesting that just in my lifetime, I remember small ball being a really big thing in the 80s, 90s, and just seeing it die. And yes, that's in conjunction with the rise in the steroid era and the home run races in the late 90s and all these things. But like, yeah, it's wild almost to me, almost like out of body seeing stolen bases coming back, because that was something explicitly from my childhood. But I'm excited that it's back, because I think the game needs this to come back. We need this kind of small ball strategy to work so that teams like the Marlins can thrive and just be like, all right, this clubhouse, this franchise, they don't have the money and or don't have a front office willing to spend the money to get some of these big slugging players. But you know what they can get? They can get a guy that can hit 330 consistently. He can get 45 to 55 stolen bags, and they can have him hit leadoff, and you got a threat every rotation, because that guy's got speed and he can make something happen. And that kinetic energy, other than, oh, let's just hope someone cranks it over the wall by 450 feet again, just hoping that happens.
Phillies and your leadoff hitters, Kyle Schwarber. And
you're just still insane to me, by the way. Like, why is that experiment still going? I don't understand.
Well, they started the season with Stott and Trey Turner, and Trey Turner hasn't done crap since the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, he used it all up for America. Take a look at Luis Ariza's baseball savant. It's full of blue, but he's batting almost 400 because of what Heath was saying. He puts the ball in play. He doesn't need to hit liners all over the place. His hard hit percentage is in the 3rd percentile. His average exit velocity is 34th. But
he's so hard to strike out, though.
He like
exactly his K percentage is the 100th percentile. Like he makes contact and he gets on base. His straight chart is singles all over the place. That's exactly
guys, look at your notes. I'm going to point to him again. He gets on base.
Well, and it's scary. Look at the Cincinnati Reds. When you could call up a 6'7" guy who can outrun a first baseman to first base to get a base hit, and then on the base pass. I'm shocked he doesn't have more than 10 steals in his first 25 games at this point. But like, it makes an interesting game, and the reason that I think the Giants, the Diamondbacks, and the Reds are even competing is because it's a whole new ball game, and that makes things more interesting. So, and as somebody who's benefiting from that as a fan, I'm very happy. Let's throw in here too, because I feel like it's related. Oh, that shift's gone. Are we feeling the shift being gone?
I couldn't find any like concrete numbers about what the shift, like the lack of the shift has done. But I will say, just aesthetically in watching the game, it's a lot more satisfying for me. because there was nothing more frustrating than seeing like an obvious, a ground ball that would squeak through the hole between first and second, just, gets gobbled up by the second baseman, or actually the shortstop, or a ground ball straight up the middle. I remember like a couple years ago saying, when I was a kid, that was a single. That's like you're getting those again because you can't stand behind second base. You can't stack 3.5 people on the right side of the infield. There's still very meticulous defensive positioning, and I was just watching the Red Sox game before we hopped on, and there were a couple, again, liners up the middle that looked solid, but the shortstop was there. But there's just something less frustrating about just the very simple fact of just sitting down and watching a game, of being like, all right, you always know there's going to be 2 guys on each side of second base. And it just feels more natural. And I wasn't even too much against the shift in the first place, but just for some reason, I just feel like an unexpected weight was lifted off my shoulders watching games now.
I have noticed a lot of shortstops playing like the closest you could possibly play up the middle without getting in trouble. So like there are still a lot of balls up the middle that get snagged up by the shortstop, but it's true. It's nice being able to see a bloop in the right field that doesn't go right into the glove of a second baseman in right field.
Yeah, that's the other big one. Yeah,
I think by just like raw data on screen, I feel like you can tell because that the shift going away has been a benefit. Because I remember preseason, a lot of people were like, yeah, guys like Corey Seager are going to benefit from this. And if you look, since he's come back from injury, he's been like a top 5 hitter in baseball. He's the starting shortstop on the All-Star team, and he's incredible. And it's because he's pulling that ball to the left side, and there's a hole there now. So I think that's for certain. And then also, and I think Heath can attest to this. Pitchers are getting blown up more. Like you can't, you are, if you are a ground ball pitcher with a subpar defense behind you, like if you look at the defensive rating for the Cardinals, who were one of the best defenses in baseball last year, and then this year it's like, what is going on with the Cardinals infield defense? Like it's forcing infielders to become athletes again. Second basemen need to start making dives and being good at their jobs, as opposed to just being a person there to kind of stop balls alongside a shortstop. And like a lot more pitchers are being punished. I think if you're into fantasy sports, you're seeing that as well too, where it's like, wow, I used to be able to get 10 points from this guy, and now he's getting blown up all the time. And I think that's just that's because of the shift. I mean, I'm probably not single-handedly, but I also, let's be honest, Luis Arraez might still be hitting 350, but he's probably not pushing 400 without the shift. So yeah, I think it's great. And I also think it's kind of at a really good balance because people are still shifting to a degree. You can pull outfielders in. And I like that element if it just forces you to kind of sacrifice something else on the field. So I mean, the proof is in the pudding a little bit. And I'm having a blast watching it because people are poking the ball all over the place, and you got to pitch well. You got to place your ball, and you got to rely on your defense.
Yeah. So I intentionally wanted to go last on this topic. And this is where I will state, this is definitive proof. I am trying to be as objective as possible because this has unequivocally hurt my ball club. And it's not even close. Our rotation had problems, and it has had problems for years. Our fan base is livid at our front office for their just ineptitude and unwillingness to try to fix things for years prior to this, let alone going into this change. But when you have a pitch to contact rotation and pitch to contact bullpen, because as Nash said, you have one of the best defensive units in the league behind you. And we still, again, the numbers look much worse this year, but we still have some really talented people Nolan Arenado is a perpetual. He's literally won the Gold Glove every year he's ever played baseball.
Like 13 years in a row or something.
Yeah.
Insane.
Paul Goldschmidt is a really talented Gold Glove winner as well. Like, we have talent, and it's just it's laughably insufficient. And that's actually kind of going back to what I said earlier about it's going to be really interesting seeing how the game evolves in 3 to 5 years. This is another part of it. You know, if you already had a strikeout rotation, guys that were pitching with fire, that had, 98 mile per hour, 100 mile per hour fastballs, and could throw a 94 mile per hour slider if they had that sick of movement and that they can maintain that kind of velocity, then you probably don't care about pitching to contact and defense because you're striking people out anyway. But if you were a franchise like the Cardinals, and the Cardinals aren't the only one, but a franchise that built your rotation and your bullpen around pitching to contact and trying to get ground balls, well, now this shift, the elimination of this shift, is a catastrophe for you. So I say all that to preface by saying I still think this is the right call. I unabashedly, and this is me trying to be as objective as possible, even though it is making my team look like complete buffoons, this was still the right decision. Because yes, Robert, you're right. That used to be a single, and it's stupid that that's not a single anymore. And you just, there's excitement. It's just like again, I go back to what I said at the very beginning. It's all about making the game more approachable, more fun to watch. Just like the stolen bases, just like getting the pitchers to pitch faster so that we go through batters more often, we get more balls in play. Part of that more balls in play is making sure they're actually in play, that it's not just, what I like to call them, Shane, was the auto out. And so it's just like, oh, okay, this guy's a pull hitter, and we're going to put 3 infielders on one side, and it's just an auto out. It's not fun. It's not exciting. There's nothing thrilling. Is it strategic? Yes. It was very strategic, but it's the same reason that they got rid of pitchers hitting the ball in the double switch in exchange for universal DH that they did this move. Yeah, you may be technically losing on strategy, and it may make the old timers really upset and the diehards who have been trying to analyze every aspect of this game. But you know what? This is more fun to watch. And it's not like strategy's just out the window. Yeah, you can still decide, do I want my shortstop to be playing right on that second baseline? Because I'm giving him a big gap to left. If I'm doing that, do I want to run that risk? There's still play there. How far forward am I pulling my outfield in? Am I giving up the bloop? Am I giving up the deep ball? What angles are, if it's Robert's ballpark and we're playing off the monster, what angle am I giving him on the monster? There's a lot still that goes into where you play your defensive players. And yeah, they just have to be smarter now. They have to be more intelligent about their moves, how fast they're moving in, what angle they're coming at it, how athletic they are. People are going to have to train harder. And yeah, people are going to have to change their rotations. People are going to have to change their bullpens. And I'm not talking the people now that are playing. They'll deal with I'm talking the up and comers, the guys in single A, the guys in double A right now that are going to be our stars in 5 to 7 years. These pitching and development coaches now need to be training everyone to, all right, if you're going to be a pitch to contact, you need to make sure it is the lowest dribbler that's going to stay right in line with where you want it, or else you better have fire, a cannon of an arm that you can blow past people, because otherwise you're just going to get lit up like the Cardinals have been all year.
Well, you said it, right? It's just bad roster construction and management on the part of teams like the Cardinals, because it's not like this was a surprise move. Everyone had the same opportunity to make their team.
And also, you can still be pitch to contact and be successful, because you can look at a guy like Marcus Stroman right now, who is having an incredible season, and he's not a big strikeout guy. He's never been a big strikeout guy. He's like a 5'5", and he throws a 92, 93 mile an hour fastball. He relies on the off speed, but he has Dansby Swanson and Nico Horner behind him, and they're making plays. Like, they're a great defense. So you can still do it. It just forces your team to be like, okay, well, we have to pay the players who can flash the leather. Hopefully they can swing the bat a little bit. And like what Shane said earlier, it diversifies your roster a little bit. Like, you can't just stick a defensive liability at second base anymore because the shortstop can kind of help them out. No, or even at first base, like they have to be able to field their position now, which is great. Like that should be the way baseball is played.
I'm just having flashes of watching Phillies games and watching Reese Hoskins, who doesn't know how to play first base.
Stone hands.
Last season, who probably cost the World Series in a couple of moments because he couldn't catch the ball at first base. And then that's the thing. Phillies aren't built to be a contact field because they have so many players that shouldn't be in the field. Like if I have to, I'm talking so much crap on Kyle Schwarber right now, but like
Castellanos shouldn't be in the field either, by the way, just to let you know.
Hasn't he improved his defense a lot?
So much.
Castellanos?
Oh, really?
This year has been completely different. He makes amazing plays. They are very lucky they have Brandon Marsh in center field who could cover some ground because Schwarber not only can't run down a ball, he can't bend over.
Well, that's
why he used to be a catcher.
Yes, he struggles to bend over and successfully grab a ball, pick it up, but he can throw it. It just, everything leading up to that point looks ugly. And I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons why the Phillies aren't more consistent is because their defense sucks. And their pitching has struggled. And actually, I think this is an interesting segue because I think the more contact and this rule are really hurting bullpens. And the next one we're going to talk about is the second base runner in extra innings, which I'm going to start this one. This is stupid. Like, I think this is so stupid. In what world do you just hand teams base runners? Like, if you're good enough to get a leadoff double or bunt for a hit and steal second base, still no outs, then that's you doing that. Now you could be a team who grounds out to the right side and then hits a sac fly and you automatically have a lead in extra innings. Like, I get it's trying to speed up the game and supposedly end the games earlier, which all I'm seeing is more teams scoring more runs in extra innings, both the top and the bottom of the inning. I just think it feels counterintuitive to a competitive sport where it's like we're just literally handing you these opportunities to score runs. And this is probably the one that I feel the most passionate about, and I just don't like it.
I was also looking for numbers to back anything up on this, and it's incredibly difficult to find anything just like laying around in Baseball Reference or Baseball Savant about like how it's affected games, if at all, apart from the aesthetics of it. I'm not quite as passionate about it as you are, Shane, but I also don't like it just because of everything that you listed. It just, when they first announced it, like it made sense for the COVID season because they were trying to make everything go quicker and, they wanted to keep injuries and sickness down. So it's just like, that season was its own thing. But the fact that they kept it just, the first time that I heard about it, it just made me go back to like my Little League days. It felt like, oh, we're shortening games, we're making things easier so parents can get their kids home for dinner.
That's T-ball crap.
Exactly. So that I agree on that front.
And how hard is that? Like, think about being a relief pitcher, and like you're thrown out there, and you have to deal with somebody on second base already. Like that's relief pitching sucks enough in Major League Baseball today. It didn't need any help. So
it's not an earned run, but it's still a loss if they give up the run. That's why wins and losses for pitchers have never mattered.
The most useless stat in baseball.
Yeah.
So this is something I wanted to mention earlier, but I thought I would save it until we specifically talked about this topic because I think it's encompassing. As much as I am in favor of these changes being the pitch clock and even this, I'm not the adamant hater that Shane is. I view this as the NHL implementing the shootout. And I think that this is a great solution for the regular season. I would love, I don't think they'll do it, for the record. But I would love if they said, all right, come playoffs, no pitch clock, no runner on second. You're playing.
Well,
the
there's
game.
already no runner on second in the playoffs.
They did. That is the way. Okay.
Yeah.
Then yeah, that's what I would want. I would never want them to do this in the playoffs. And I would even be a fan of eliminating the pitch clock in the playoffs. In the playoffs, let the game play out just the way it's always played. Let people take their time, let people get into their own heads, their own psyche, everything that the game is. Because if we're going to be honest, most people in most sports, once your team is eliminated, you're not watching anymore. Now, there are some diehards that will just watch it because they love the game. But if we're being really honest, if your team's out, it's just not something you follow as much. Like you'll check it on your phone just to see who won, but you're not watching the game. But if you are one of those fans of that team, you don't care how long it goes. For the most part, you're like, this is exciting. I want to watch the whole thing. Let's just go. I could do baseball for forever. And I would love for them to adopt that strategy. And I'm glad to hear, again, Robert, I didn't even know that it's not in the playoffs. So that at least makes me happy, because that was the one thing I did care about. So in the regular season, I'm fine with it. Again, I think it is kind of ridiculous. It's not necessary. I think baseball players if we make them play 162 games, every once in a while they can play a game that goes to 17 innings. It's not going to kill them. But if they want to do it this way, so that games potentially end in 10 innings or 11 innings, fine, whatever. I'm more indifferent than annoyed.
I could not agree more with what Heath said. I think that I have a suspicion. Well, I would guess that it would take a couple seasons before they would, or maybe even one, before they would revert their pitch clock or back for the postseason, to see how it's actually going to work through the first year. But everything you said, I completely agree. I've never been in like the biggest fan of the runner on second base. Like I think Robert said, it made sense for a while, but I feel like the new rules have kind of made it so it feels a little bit redundant to have both. The game is already kind of faster, and we have
not kind of faster.
Oh yeah,
is faster.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear.
The game is faster. People are getting on base more because the shift is banned. People are stealing base more. So the chances of it going to 14, 15, 16, 17 innings are
incredibly small,
much smaller now.
Yeah.
So it feels like a little bit of a redundant rule. And I also feel like there's just a better way to figure that out, because we already have the whole scenario where you can expand rosters sometimes or use IL spots or bench spots. Like there should just be a rule that if you go like 12 innings plus or whatever, you get to expand your roster and like call somebody up or whatever, because your players had to play 16 innings. And, if they have to play at 10 a.m. the next day or something. I don't know. It just feels like there's a better way to fix that. I just don't think it's going to stay around very long, because as Robert pointed out, it's already gone in the postseason. It's so.
Yeah, they're going to have to wake up on that Sunday morning and play on Peacock. I do kind of like that. It's just like, wow, I could start watching baseball 11:30 a.m. on Sunday and just watch it all day.
The start time is better, but finding 17 different places to watch games is awful.
Brutal.
Between MLB TV, Valley Sports, Apple, Peacock, it's just ridiculous.
I think MLB is going to get a situation where they're going to sell to a streaming service, and it's all going to be on a streaming.
They better figure it out, because there's a lot of small local markets that are going to need help real soon when Diamond crashes and Valley Sports is no more, and it's not going to be pretty. And it's honestly, I think it's kind of embarrassing, if I'm being completely blunt, that the league hasn't been more forward thinking on this and trying to figure this out, when Major League Soccer has an exclusive contract with Apple TV, and you can literally watch any game for any team anywhere around the country. And it's like one price of like $70 for the whole season. And you're telling me baseball, the much bigger league, financially and just in terms of fan base in the United States by a wide margin can't figure this out, please.
In comes Apple.
I might be speaking incorrectly here, but I'm pretty sure something happened early in the season with San Diego where they like lost their contract.
Yeah. And
so now they're not blacked out anymore because like the MLB just like picked them up because. So I'm like, why? This whole thing feels like a facade, like a sham, just ready to collapse and crumble. And it feels awful that small markets
taking advantage of the fans.
Yeah, it's awful.
I'm sitting here with my Hulu Live TV and it says, look, Mets Diamondbacks, SNY, and then flips me the bird when I click on it. It's just like, it's blacked out in your area.
Well, I live in an area where I am blacked out for at least 4 teams.
I was gonna say, like, you're blocked out for a lot, right?
I live in Pennsylvania, so the Orioles, Nationals, Pirates, Phillies, at least. So that, and I have the MLB TV subscription for the Red Sox. And when they play any one of those 4 teams, except for Phillies, because I have YouTube TV, which carries the Phillies local broadcast, I'm just SOL because of stupid blackouts.
That's just so convoluted. It's so unnecessary.
Yeah. That could be a whole other episode of MLB check-in. Let's get through these last 2. We got you have to pitch the 3 batters. So do we miss Tony La Russa coming out and switching in 3 relief pitchers in 1 inning to get 3 outs?
I'm going to take this one as someone who had to suffer Tony La Russa more than any of you. And as someone who, as much as I really struggled with a lot of Tony's crap throughout the years, I am very thankful he gave me 2 World Series titles. I'm not oblivious to that fact.
Lost you 2 more.
No, we don't miss it.
Or 1 more.
Robert, shut it. No, we don't miss it. We don't miss it at all. You know why? Because it was, again, to me, that's no different than the double switch and the shift. And that is the hyper strategy of the quote unquote old timer. That's not necessary. All this really is to me is an evolution of the strategy. Okay, now instead of having the very hyper specific lefty righty matchups, you have to have forward thinking matchups because you need to bring in someone for 3. Is that which pitcher do you pitch for 3 batters? Are they going to have the right matchups for that situation? Strategy is still there. It's just in a different context. And that context has now shifted it so that the game is going by so much time was wasted on, all right, because it's not just switching pitchers. Let's be very clear. It was, I got to do a mound visit. All right, because I'm giving my bullpen more time to warm up. And then I'm going to do a second mound visit after 2 or 3 more pitches. And then I'm going to go take the guy out. Then he walks in from the pen. Then he has 7 to 10 more warm-up pitches. And then he's pitching to 1 batter and we're doing it all over again. And that's insane. There's no reason for it. Again, I watched it for the better part of like 15 years. I'm so glad it's gone. This is one of the best changes they've literally ever made, and no one will ever convince me otherwise.
Relievers have to sprint from the bullpen.
Right. And as La Russa got older and older, his walks to the mound got longer and longer.
Oh, the White Sox, Aaron had to deal with that, not me.
Yeah.
We have no more Mike Myers out there. Extreme submarine lefties that come in for 1 pitch, 1 batter, and then nope out. But Nash, Robert, do you have anything you want to add with that?
No, I think he put it perfectly on it.
I think Heath has an expertise in this specific area.
It just frustrates me with Alex Cora sometimes, and that gets down to his own bullpen management. But yeah, it's the 3 batter thing. I thought was going to be a bigger deal, but then I was like, you know what? Lefty righty is one very specific situation that doesn't really happen too often. Like, it happens, but it's not as drastic
pervasive
of a change as like the pitch clock or anything like that.
And honestly, it asks you to have kind of a more diverse bullpen because you are asking, it's like, okay, well, I guess this guy can be as specific. He's like, he's only going in there to face right-hander batters. but then you also need to have a lefty that can get out both for the more diverse lineups. So I don't know. It forces pitchers to adapt. And once again, it increases kind of that athletic strategy brain. That's always been my biggest issue, where we're like old heads are annoyed that their strategy doesn't work anymore. When I'm just like, the strategy is still there. It's just getting better. Like it forces players to get better and to adapt. So I think that's all it is. It takes the manager out of the game a little bit more too, which I honestly don't mind.
Anything that gets Ollie Marmol out of the game is fine by me.
I feel like at some point, baseball is going to have to blow up the bullpen and figure out something, because how many relief pitchers can you think of that have longevity and are actually consistently good at this point?
Right, Kimbrel. Yeah, except for those big name closers, it's almost a crapshoot.
Well, and even some of the seasons, he's having like 4 ERAs and stuff like that. So it's like,
it's a naturally volatile position though, because you're only going out there for 50, 60 innings, and you get, you're put in situations where you have to, there's 2 guys on and all this crap. So it's like, I understand that I get what you're saying, but it's just, it makes sense when you get the up and down, up and down, up and down, because they don't have a full season to kind of have it average out in their favor. So yeah, I mean, yeah. But I guess that's the reason why the elite closers are the elite closers, because they are Josh Hader and they're Kenley Jansen and Craig Kimbrel, who could do it year after year after year. Edwin Diaz, Felix Bautista. Ooh, that dude is nasty.
I have Diaz from the Reds on my fantasy team right now.
He's good.
Him up. I think this is a whole entire other side conversation I'm not going to get into, but I'm still sad from the days where, a starting pitcher would guarantee go out and pitch 7 innings. The long have passed.
It's another conversation entirely, but I do think it's interesting that as much as we're talking about all these changes, and I would say overall, based off of the candor of our conversation, I would say we're universally positive on most of these changes. Would anyone disagree with me in that regard? No.
Probably
so yeah,
not.
I think we're pretty for the most part happy. Yet I still think there's room for growth, because 2 things. One, Shane, what you just said, pitchers are in trouble. And I don't mean that in terms of like their strikeout rates and stuff, because in some of those ways they're better than they've ever been. And because these people are throwing their arms out like crazy. I feel like Tommy John surgeries happen so much more now than we heard about them a decade ago. And like because people are just throwing so much smoke that it's just destroying their arms. But at the same time, like you said, the idea of just having a starting pitcher that can go 6 or 7 innings, just gone, evaporated. If a starting pitcher goes 4 innings, I'm thrilled, Now that's also partially Cardinals, but like in general, around the league, that's just a thing where like if they go 4 or 5 innings, you take that, and you take that with excitement, which is really bizarre when you rewind the clock even a decade. That was not the case, let alone throughout the whole history of this game. And just pitchers are getting blown up a lot more than they used to be. The things are not as consistent, and the elimination of the shift, there's the pitch clock, there's factors to that. But even before this season, this was happening, so it's really not even this season's changes. So in some ways we need to do something to help the pitchers, but on the flip side, something also needs to help the batters. I saw something on Reddit literally today, just a couple hours ago. There's not a single team in all of baseball, and I'm gonna make sure I read it right here because I'm gonna mess this up. Not a single team in the major leagues that has at least 2 qualified hitters that are hitting over 300. Not a team, not one.
Phillies are
there's all
like
either
so
teams
close.
have 1 player above hitting 300 or no one. And again, this kind of goes back to what I said earlier as well about we're just in this era of get 2 guys on and crack a home run and just bring them in, and small balls luckily it looks like it's coming back, but for the large part, like people don't hit for average anymore. Like average in the era of
kind of overrated.
What?
I think average is kind of overrated.
But that's what I'm saying.
You were about to say OPS, right?
Yeah. In the era of OPS, average has been obliterated. People don't care as much if you hit 200 or 220. But rewind the clock, you know, if you didn't hit like 250, you were a joke. Like you had to hit at least 250, 260 to keep your spot on the roster, let alone you probably should be hitting 280, 285. That was the goal. If you were hitting 300, that was exceptional. And I don't know what still needs to be changed. Smarter minds than me need to figure it out. I'm sure players could come up with some ideas, but something has to happen where we can simultaneously help the pitchers, that especially the starters, so that they last 5 innings consistently instead of getting blown out in like 3. And also I know you may not care about it as much about average, but I do, because that goes back to the idea of putting balls in play and making it exciting. Like, yes, I understand from a statistical standpoint and from strategy standpoint, just getting a runner on base via a walk or hit batter is just as valuable as a hit, but like, it's not as exciting. You know, we want to see those balls get in play. I want to see hits. I want to see doubles, and something needs to help the batters there too, because averages are really low right now. And I do think in the long run, that will be a problem.
Quick update. Kyle Schwarber, 185.
But that's the thing, right? Because I was earlier, I pulled up the comparison between Kyle Schwarber and Joey Gallo. Like Joey Gallo has the highest OPS plus of the last few years of his career. You know, I think that's what's important. Even though he's still hitting 191, he's got his 15 home runs, and he's batting 191, but has a 311 on base. You know, that's what is important. I'm not too worried about the 191 when at least his OPS plus
and Kyle
is above 100.
Schwarber walks a lot.
Yeah,
but nobody wants to watch him run around the bases.
And those guys are exceptions too. You know, like it's not like everyone has one or more of those guys.
Which it looks like Castellanos and Bryson Stott, who are both Philly starters, are above 300 at this point. Stott just got back above 300.
It might be like qualified hitters. Is Bryson Stott played every day?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He was their leadoff hitter for like a month or two, and then they're like, well, now Kyle Schwarber back in leadoff spot again. It's June. He'll hit home runs. But to your point, Ryan Howard got booed so much for batting 250 and 260.
Yeah.
And he hit like 50 home runs.
The way Ryan was treated is a crime, if we're being completely honest. That guy was villainized for sins that were not his sins.
Well, you know, that's just Phillies fans. But I do think, obviously, that's not the point of this conversation with the change rules and stuff like that, but I miss the days of, you know, Jamie Moyer pitching till he was 50, throwing 78 miles an hour, and throwing 7 innings. But, you know, it's a different game, and I don't know if things are going to change.
The Chad innings eater.
Yeah.
Look at Evaldi. He has complete games for the Rangers.
Right. That's what I was going to say, is that it's not only the injuries that are a problem in terms of like the longevity of pitchers. It's about how they're managed too, because it's all about, you can't let them get through the third time of the order and all that kind of stuff. Even if they're cruising, it's like, oh, his stats spike once he gets to the third time around the order.
Pitch count says that he needs to be out at 73, or, you know.
Sure, right. And it's not even, I'm not saying that you're wrong about the injuries, because that's definitely a factor, but it's like, it's almost over managing too. And I'm sure the stats back up the managers, or else they wouldn't be doing it. But like, you're right, it is a little bit less exciting to see like, oh, someone has a no hitter at 100 pitches in the 7th inning and they get taken out because of a pitch count or something like that.
Yeah, I don't want to see combined hitters.
Yeah, the stats honestly back what you set up as well, though, because it's clear to see that like if you have 4 starting pitchers, and every day they're getting pulled in the 5th and they're doing okay, maybe they gave up 2 runs and they're at their pitch count, you're taxing your bullpen. And that's what, like, a team like the Mets, I think, is getting punished this year because of that. Like, their pitchers aren't going very deep in the games. And so I think you're both kind of right.
Well, kind of right.
Regard. So
speaking of pitching strategy and managing, our last rule change, limit on mound visits. I got to tell a little story that I said before we started recording. This past weekend on Sunday, I was watching the Phillies game and paying attention to the Diamondbacks game on like that MLB thing where you just have the drawings of the people and they have pitches. So they do a mound visit to Ranger Suarez, who Rangers, after his first couple of starts, has been the best pitcher on the Phillies team. He goes out there 6-7 innings every time, gives up maybe 2 runs. Bases are loaded against the Nationals. And Stone Garrett strolls up and we're going to do a mound visit. There's 2 outs. You just need to get him hit somewhere. Give him a grand slam. What the hell did you talk about? Then in the Diamondbacks game, I see, okay, it's first and second. Zach Gallen's pitching against the Angels. Moniak comes up and I see mound visit. I'm like, oh no. And then he gives up a 3-run home run. And both those teams lost because of those home runs. And I'm just saying, you're like, what are these mound visits doing anyway? So my crazy idea is eliminate mound visits unless you're coming out to take out a pitcher. So there's my hot take.
Or just give everyone earpieces because the pitch comm is working anyway. Just make it a more advanced thing with mics.
I mean, they're using it as a way to
stall the game.
Yeah, do a little timeout, So
yeah.
Well, didn't help.
Throw the batter off their rhythm, although it doesn't always work. Yeah, it's no different than trying to freeze the kicker in football. That's what it's used for, or to stall for your bullpen to have more time to warm up.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree. I even from that strategy aspect of it, I don't think it's necessary. It is clearly just a delay tactic. I would think the compromise that I would like to see is no coaching mound visits unless they're coming to change out a batter, but you can have a catcher go and do a mound visit, as often as they want or something. I think that would be a healthy compromise, because seeing a catcher run out from behind home plate to talk to their pitcher is much different than a 60-year-old man struggling up the steps to get out of the dugout.
It's not just like any 60-year-old man, though. I think we're at a good compromise because, Shane, your stories are fun, but it's also just kind of anecdotal. Yeah. Most of the times that a pitching coach, his whole job is to look at a pitcher's mechanics and be like, oh, you're doing this or that. So it could be just like, oh, you need to lift your leg up a little bit more. You got to do this or that, or all right, let's get the infield position this way, or, all the 1,000 different things that they could be talking about. So I actually kind of like the way that it is right now. So we're not doing 6 mound visits in an inning. The pitcher and the catcher can talk if they need to. The coach can come out if it's like a really important situation. But yeah, I don't know if there's really any other better compromise besides eliminating it altogether. And I really don't think that's an option, especially since time of game's already been cut by almost half an hour this year. I would assume they're pretty pleased with that as a business.
I'm happy with I'm fine with the catcher coming out and trying to talk to the pitcher and stuff like that. I would be interested to see stats and see after mound visits if they actually get out of those situations or not.
I think that the stats are probably in support of what Robert's saying. They wouldn't do it as much if it wasn't working.
A lot of people do a lot of things that make
Shane, you're just convinced that those 2 mound visits you saw
fully representative of baseball history.
I teach statistics. I would be very interested to actually see if they work or not. Because the thing is, it's like the Oakland Athletics' whole entire thing is all Moneyball, and look at them.
That's different now. Like,
And
so is the Rays, and they're the
Robert,
best
what did
team
you
in
bring up
baseball.
earlier about the Yankees and how they're convinced that this is the way to actually win games? And when was the last time the Yankees legitimately won anything?
Well, that's a whole other situation. Like those three teams that were just brought up, the Rays, the A's, and the Yankees they're all having like problems that are bigger than baseball. The Rays and A's are that their owners aren't putting enough into the team, and the Yankees too, in a different kind of way, in that they're just kind of satisfied with that they're raking in a profit every year because they're the Yankees, and that they don't need to change out Cashman. You know, I drink Yankee tears. That's what's in this water bottle here. So I'm pretty plugged into what's going on over there. So
I don't actually think they should get rid of mound visits permanently. I was definitely joking, but like I do like the rule of limiting them because it gets ridiculous after a while.
But does it though? Because they are limited. Is that what you mean? Like you like it now?
I'm saying I like the rule that they are limiting them.
Okay.
Because before this, to Heath's point of the whole reliever situation, that was insane. It's like watching the last 2 minutes of a football game. Yeah. Like multiple times during a baseball game. Like, how much do I have to watch? This is the longest 2 minutes of my life. This 2 minutes was 30 minutes. And sometimes baseball turned
one
into
egg is 40 eggs.
So overall, it sounds like we're decently positive about some of the changes that have been going on. Does anybody have any final thoughts they want to throw out there before we wrap this up?
Screw Rob Manfred.
Woo! I second that.
Even though we still like his rule changes, I don't like him.
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna lie, I've been totally checked out since Robert said, you know, who knows what they're talking about on those mound visits. And my mind immediately went to Bull Durham. And they're like, well, Nuke's scared because his islands are jammed, and we need a rooster, and we don't know what to get for their wedding present. We're dealing with a lot of serious shit here. And I have not been part of the conversation the last 5 minutes.
Got Pedro Serrano, his chicken.
Yeah, right.
Well, that sounds like besides we don't like Manfred. But Nash, Robert, Heath, thank you so much for coming on and talking some baseball. Shaking things up here on my channel. And it was also nice. It was actually very interesting talking to a group of people that aren't just Phillies fans, because usually that's most of my videos that have to do with baseballs with my brother.